some very scary stuff to talk about, but also some very good stuff, right? We've got a lot of our favorite stocks on the charts right now, and some of them have been popping off as of late. We did have a bit of a bloody end to the day yesterday. Unfortunately, some of our favorite stocks were falling. But we'll see what they can do today, right? We've also got to talk about a lot of macroeconomic stuff that's been eating my mind away lately, right? There's some very worrying stuff that I've been thinking of, and some things going on in real life as well. So we're going to start off talking about what happened at the end of yesterday, right? We saw that some of these stocks, we'll pull up CFVI right here, were doing incredibly well towards the first 3 quarters of the day pretty much. And DWAC as well. And then towards the end of the day, they kind of tanked, right? DWAC especially just dropped off a cliff. It was like there were no buyers stepping in for a couple of minutes right here when we just fell straight down to $83. And that's where we're sitting right now. We're sitting around 83 with DWAC. CFVI is around 15, so it did not fall quite to the same extent. It was still a pretty significant percentage point drop. But all things considered, I'm not too worried about these stocks, right? They still... at least CFVI still made gains on the day. Did DWAC make gains on the day? Not quite. But CFVI still had about 18% gains on the day when the market closed. I even bought some more CFVI. And right before it moved down, I sold some calls with the shares I bought as collateral. So decent trade in my opinion. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of days with CFVI's price. I'm very bullish on it over the long term. And this pump up, we could see get a lot bigger if Joe Rogan decides to move over onto Rumble. So other than that, good morning, guys. Good morning, Nakavistu, Max Pierce, Kitchener, Leslie Quaid, Rocky Mountain Gobblers, Maria, Kitchener, Silver, Abby, and Manny C. And Mike Steele. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the stream. We've got some very, very exciting and very important stuff to talk about today. The first story is a bit lighthearted, but also about a very serious issue. It's about the Russia situation, but it's a different take on the Russia situation, right? It's Bitcoin donations pouring into Ukraine as Russia masses troops on the border. So apparently, people have been donating Bitcoin to Russia to help support, or to Ukraine to help support their military. So they've been giving it to non-government organizations and volunteer groups, and it's been used to help arm the Ukrainian military with military gear, medical supplies, and drones. So pretty cool stuff, what people are using Bitcoin for nowadays. And Bitcoin and crypto in general is something that I've been thinking about more and more as of late, and that I've been becoming more and more bullish on over the long term. I think that there is more and more of a space for it in our everyday lives and potentially more of an investment opportunity in it, but I'm still formulating some of my thoughts on Bitcoin. But those people who were donating Bitcoin to Ukraine probably saw the massive rise in Bitcoin's price over the past 7 days, and now they might be wanting some of it back, right? They might have been donating it back when it was in the low 30s, and now they might see, oh, wow, it increased by 10K per coin. Maybe can I have some of that Bitcoin back? So Bitcoin's been doing pretty good lately, and it's funny that they're donating Bitcoin to Ukraine because just a bit ago, Russia, I believe it was, tried to ban the mining of Bitcoin, and potentially they successfully did it. I did not follow up on that story, but they were considering banning Bitcoin mining and crypto mining in general. So it's interesting to see people using the asset that Russia was trying to ban the mining of to support Ukraine, which is probably considered at this time to be Russia's enemy. So Max Pierce says, Rob, it says Trump will appear on Fox Business this morning. I saw that. And depending on what time it is, if we can catch a stream of it, we might play it. I'm not sure what time it is, though. I just saw that he'd be on, and we might play it. Maybe he has something to say about CFVI, DWAC. Could be interesting. So the second thing that we've got to talk about, not too important of a story. We really have the really important stories and interesting stuff towards the end of this little news section of the stream. But the second thing, it's not crazy. It's Peloton, right? We were looking at Peloton the other day, and Peloton slashed its full-year revenue outlook as the company overhauls some of its stuff and cuts jobs, right? So Peloton is not looking too good, and this is a company that I've been keeping track of for a while, and that I really do not like that much, right? We saw a pump in the pre-market 2 days ago, or the after hours, I think, when Amazon started up some rumors that they might be buying out Peloton. So people started buying them up. It looks like they've got their earnings call later today, and we're going to see what happens with Peloton stock. But they cut their forecasts for 2022, right? They originally were expecting to get between 4.4 billion and 4.8 billion dollars worth of revenue this year. They cut it to 3.7 billion to 3.8 billion. So they're not looking too good for 2022. That's probably why they're cutting some jobs. And they have been actually losing money as of late, right? Peloton has been a non-profitable company, whereas during the height of the pandemic, when people were really worried about working out, they were making quite a bit. And this business is something that I really just do not think makes a lot of sense in the world that we're currently living in, right? It made a lot of sense when you were in a pandemic world, but essentially what they do is they sell these bikes and treadmills that are pretty high tech, and you have this screen on them where you then pay a monthly subscription, either $59 or $39 a month, depending on the tier that you want, and you can then have access to these workout classes with their service. And boy, oh boy, does that sound very expensive, way more expensive than the gym membership that I have. So it seems a little ridiculous that people would be buying this already somewhat expensive bike. I think it's, $1,500 for the bike, $2,500 for the bike plus. And the treadmill probably has a pretty steep cost as well. But I mean, I can't imagine paying $1,500 and then deciding to pay more than my gym membership for access to a bike that has a video playing on it. You can probably find videos that are just as good on YouTube. It makes very little sense to me. But what I found surprising was actually that they have a relatively high number of users of these bikes and subscribers to their service. They have, They said they expect to end the year with about 3 million connected subscribers versus previous estimates of 3.3 to 3.45 million. All right, but currently they've got, where was it? Yeah, so they ended the quarter with 2.77 million connected fitness subscribers. I mean, crazy stuff to see that 2.77 million people are willing to subscribe to this thing for such a steep price, and for what seems like very little value added, right? You could probably get that stuff for free, just my opinion, but Peloton, I'm not too bullish on them. I think that Peloton is going to probably continue moving down. They don't seem like the most sturdy company, right? It seems like a very frivolous expense in a lot of people's wallets, right? They probably don't need to be spending that much on a virtual video service when there are already so many workout classes there. So I don't know. Just not my favorite company. I hate to bash Peloton, but I've got to do it. So we've got some relatively scary stuff going on, right? Some statistics came out, and we just got them today, about the trade deficit. And the trade deficit in December increased to $80.7 billion. So here's a chart of the U.S. trade deficit, right? It's basically showing U.S. imports versus U.S. exports, and you can see that the red line is imports. It always increases more and more than the exports does, and the difference between the two grows and grows. Now, this is creating a real problem because we have to fund that somehow, right? We can't just perpetually consume more than we produce, right? We're just perpetually taking more stuff into the country than we're putting out. And you can see the consequence of that in the national debt, right? The national debt has been on the rise for a very long time. In fact, we just crossed $30 trillion relatively recently. And if you look at the national debt over time, you can see that we're actually, in more recent years, accelerating the rate at which the national debt has increased, especially during the course of 2019 to 2020. Look at that sharp increase in the national debt. Now, it's worth noting that the national debt has been around for quite a while. We've had the national debt increasing since, I think, the early 1900s, and nothing bad has happened thus far. But this is very scary, that we're getting to a point where I think every month we're taking $80 billion more worth of goods into the country than we're putting out. So I think we can look at it. December exports were $228 billion worth of goods, and December imports were $308 billion worth of imports. So crazy to see just how much more we're taking into the country every month on a month-by-month basis than we're putting out. And if for whatever reason that at any point had to stop, then everybody's quality of life would go down by probably a very significant margin, right? We would all be without a lot of stuff that we love if for any reason we had to not have a big deficit with trade, right? Right now, we are just consuming and consuming and consuming. And the way I like to think about it is we're basically consuming this stuff as if we're a person in real life just using a credit card to buy everything, right? We're just buying everything on a credit card, taking out debt every month to buy more and more stuff. And not only are we doing that, every month we tend to buy even more and take out even more debt than we did the month before, so we can keep the same lifestyle and keep improving our lifestyles without actually working any harder, right? Imagine we have a job and we just spend all the money from the job. We spend every last penny of it. We then take out debt on a credit card, and every month we increase that debt. That's essentially what the United States is doing with this trade deficit, right? We just keep on taking money out, and it's a very scary thing. And the way that we fund it, well, sometimes we have to print money to do it, right? We have to print money. The Fed has to monetize the debt. If there's not enough people willing to buy up the United States debt, the Fed has to do it. And more recently, we've had these stimulus checks. Now, stimulus checks, it's a really funny article that I just read today, and it's kind of scary to see where people's heads are at with these stimulus checks. Now, everybody loves free money, right? I love getting free money. I'm sure you all loved getting the stimulus checks and depositing those. But what's very scary is calls for a fourth stimulus check in the United States are still ongoing in a bid to receive more support amid the current pandemic. But that seems unlikely. So all in all, if we're worried about inflation and whatnot, the last thing that we should be wanting is additional stimulus checks, because that's only going to aid the increase in inflation, right? The more stimulus that you put out there, the more money that's in circulation, the more people are going to want to spend that money, and the more they're going to be buying, and the more demand there's going to be for goods, which will in turn raise the price if supply stays the same. So what we're looking at is a situation, it's actually really funny why people are calling for this, okay? Listen to this. The federal government looks unlikely to provide this form of financial aid, but hope still remains that a stimulus check style package will be offered. Okay, and listen to this next part. On a state level to combat the latest rise in inflation. So people are worried that prices are going up and that people can't buy as much as they once could. So some people are calling for the government to send out stimulus checks so that they can buy the same amount of stuff. And that's just not at all how the economy works. I mean, maybe we can increase the trade deficit a little bit more. And actually, if that happens, then yeah, we could have a little bit more stuff just on borrowed money. But if we have the same amount of supply and prices are going up because demand is going up because people have more money, and then we just print even more money and hand it out to people, well, that's just going to make inflation far worse than it currently is, right? We're already looking at relatively high inflation, and inflation that's probably likely to rise. But look at this. Look at this. Here's something that applies more to the stock market than overall inflation, okay? Dan Price, I don't know who Dan Price is, but he sent out this tweet that was linked in the article. He said, sort of weird how everyone talks about inflation being caused by $1 burger increases, while ignoring how the Fed printed trillions of dollars to bail out the stock market. As a result, since then, we've added $33 trillion in wealth into circulation, but 74% went to the richest 10%. So overall, what I'm getting from this, right? This guy, if assuming these statistics are true, it completely explains why we're seeing a relatively low increase in inflation thus far in everyday goods, right? Not that much money of what was printed actually went to everyday people, and we all kind of knew that, right? We knew that the stimulus checks were a small part of those relief packages that the government was passing way back during the beginning of the pandemic, and that most of the money was going to the ultra wealthy. Now, we all knew this, and thus we were not too surprised to see that over the course of the past couple of years, ever since the pandemic started, stocks have been skyrocketing, right? Because all of that money that the wealthy got, well, they don't want to just keep cash sitting around. I mean, maybe they want some cash, but they don't want to keep cash sitting around for the most part. They would much rather buy up stocks. And you can see stock prices absolutely soared. The S&P, if we look at it on a percentage point basis from the lows of the pandemic when the Fed started printing to the highs that we were just at earlier this month, was up more than double, right? We more than doubled the price of stocks in the market, right? 117% gain on the SPY. So the rich just piled their money into the stock market. And that money, much like inflation, isn't just going to disappear, right? It's not like when you buy a burger, you burn that dollar that you bought the burger for, and now the $1.50 that you have to pay for the burger. It's not like you burn that. You hand it over to the person who made the burger, and then they pay their employees some, they pay their suppliers some, they keep some for themselves, and then they go buy a burger, right? So the money is still in circulation. All of this money that we still printed, that's why inflation isn't likely to just dissipate and go away all of a sudden just because, we're not still printing more, right? Inflation is probably going to be pretty persistent because we've printed this money, it's in circulation now, and the same situation, I believe, applies to the stock market, right? We've seen these stock prices go up dramatically And that money, when you buy a stock from someone, it's not like you're burning that money. It's not like that money gets thrown in a vault and locked away. You're handing it to somebody else. Somebody is on the other side of that trade, and you're buying a stock from them, and they're selling that stock to you. Then they have the cash, and they can go buy another stock. So that's one of the reasons why I'm pretty bullish on stock prices, right? I don't think that stock prices are just going to fall off a cliff if the Fed stops printing money all of a sudden. We have inflated the stock market, right? There's so much more cash in circulation now. In fact, 80% of all US dollars in existence were printed in the last 22 months. There's so much more money out there that we're probably not just going to see stock prices plummet in terms of dollars because there's so much cash out there. People have a ton of cash. The wealthy are trading it back and forth, and thus stock prices are rising, right? People want to hold assets other than cash. The government can just print more cash. They can't just print more stock necessarily, right? Companies can always raise capital through stock offerings, but when they're doing that, they're actually collecting capital in exchange, and it makes the company more valuable at an intrinsic level, right? Because they have more cash on the balance sheet. So they're not just printing something for nothing. They're just letting you buy more stock in exchange for them taking cash that they can then use to grow. So I overall am pretty bullish on these stock prices. I think that we're going to see really good stuff for the stock market for a long time because of all of this cash that was printed. And we're still seeing the effects of it. I mean, sure, right now people are a little worried about the Fed raising rates and all that, but really all that happened was people got a little scared, and we saw prices move down a little bit because people were scared. So we'll see what happens over the long term with these stock prices, but I expect that we'll probably see much, much higher stock prices in the future because there's so much additional cash in the system, and that the stock price inflation is probably not going to go away anytime soon. And that's just my suspicion, but the really scary thing that people are talking about, right? These fourth stimulus checks where people want to print more money to combat the latest rise in inflation. People are upset that they can't buy as many hamburgers or as many steaks or whatever it is, as many shirts as they once could. And thus their solution is, well, print more money, hand me some money so I can buy that stuff to the same extent that I once did. Well, if we actually go down that route, we are looking at a situation that looks more like this, right? Where this is a real situation in Venezuela, I believe. The bolivar is the currency that's sitting right behind this chicken, and this is how much of it you would need to buy this chicken, because all they did was they just kept printing money, and they basically inflated their currency into oblivion, and now this is how much a chicken costs, and it's ridiculous. And this is a real situation that's going on right now, right? This is something taken somewhat recently. I believe a reporter went down there, and they did a couple of shoots like this. Sometimes they would have a block of cheese in front, and the stack would be smaller because the cheese is cheaper, but they did this a bunch and basically just showed how much a currency can really get inflated. And people don't seem to realize that what causes the inflation is the printing and passing out of this money, and just much more money being in circulation. So that is something to worry about, right? That's why I tend to think cash is trash, right? The government, you never know what they're going to do. Right now, the US dollar hasn't really plummeted in value. You can still get stuff with the dollar. It's gone down in value. We can take a peek at the inflation rate, and we will look at that. Let's see what the inflation rate was. So inflation, we've got the chart right here. It was up to 7%, CPI data at least. Some people think it's a lot more than that as of December. So we've seen pretty darn high inflation already, right? 7% isn't anything to scoff at, right? If you're paying 7% more for everything, then you've got 7% less stuff. And nobody likes that. But the real pain could be yet to come. And one of the reasons why there hasn't been too much is this. Let's find that article again. It's right here. Is that of the money that was added into circulation, most of it went to the richest 10%. Now, if you think about what are the richest 10% buying, right? Well, they're already the richest 10%. They can already have all of the physical things that they want, right? They're not worried about going to McDonald's or we're at whatever restaurant they want to, whatever fast food place, even the most expensive restaurant. If you're in the richest 10%, you can probably go to any place that you want and spend as much as you'd like and not have too much to worry about with it. So when people add money to your bank account, you're not likely to do that much more stuff in real life. I mean, maybe you buy a new supercar, right? We've seen prices of these assets like Rolexes and supercars go up quite a bit, but you're not likely to actually consume more lettuce or consume more beef or chicken or whatever it is, or buy more shirts. Maybe you'll buy a couple nicer shirts, but you probably won't consume that much more material and fabric and all that. So what you actually end up buying is oftentimes stocks, right? That's why we saw stocks go up so much, and that's one of the reasons. That's what's protecting us from seeing absolutely insane inflation. Though we printed all of this money, a lot of it went to the rich, and the rich just don't need to consume that much more, right? You can add $1 billion to a rich person's bank account, and it's just a drop in the bucket, right? They don't actually notice having that much more money, and they're not going to start buying more real goods. And so the demand for those real goods, like burgers and whatnot, isn't going to go up that much. Now, what is going to cause that to go up is these stimulus checks that pass out a little bit of money to everybody, because everyone, for the most part, other than the rich, they're going to take that money and they're going to go spend it. And that actually causes an increase in demand for these goods and an increase in price for things like burgers, like people are talking about. So that's just something I've been thinking about lately, and is something that's a little bit worrying, right? That people really don't yet seem to get what all of this inflation is being caused by, right? And they're still talking about passing out stimulus checks to combat inflation. It's a very scary thing to see, because if they did that, well, that would only make inflation a whole lot worse. And what's even more worrying is it would decrease faith in the US dollar, that people would be worried in other countries, right, that the US dollar might be losing value because we're just going to keep printing it. If prices keep going up, just getting something for nothing, right? All we do is print and then take in these imports. And at that point, people might decide to stop importing to us. And that would be very worrying, because then that would have a real negative impact on our quality of life in the United States. If we were unable to have this massive trade deficit, if we were unable to import dramatically more goods than we export, then that could have a really negative impact on our quality of life. We would have far less stuff, and nobody would like that. So we'll see how long we can keep this circus show going. It's been going on for a while. Like I've said, look at this. This is the national debt since 1990, and it goes on way before this. So the United States has had a national debt for a long time, right? Since the early 1900s, I believe. And it seems unlikely that at any one year where it's going to be the year when everyone decides, all right, the United States is a scam, they're never going to pay off their debt, we're not going to lend them any more money or send them any more goods. But at some point, at any point, it could happen. But once again, it seems unlikely that any given year is going to be the one, because it's been going on for probably at this point 100 plus, and no one's called us out on it yet. Now, we'll see if this is the year, right? Maybe this is the year, but it seems unlikely, right? You're looking at less than a 1% chance, because we've had this national debt for almost 100 years at this point, I believe. So it seems unlikely that anyone is going to be right and guessing the exact given year that we're going to get called out on that and that the economy is going to collapse. That's why I tend to remain bullish on these stocks, right? Every year you could probably look at this chart of the national debt and say, back in 2000, look at that. We have $5 trillion worth of national debt. That's insane. That's too much. And now we're looking at, $30 trillion worth of national debt. So it seems tough to call the exact time when the bubble is going to pop, but it is something to think about. So Paul Rush says, Rob, when you have time, watch the YouTube videos on David Hunter, a contrarian who's predicting a market melt up and crash this year. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, anything is possible, right? If people really pop this bubble, then the United States, the market could crash, right? The wealthy would probably try to take their assets out of the United States. They'd probably try to sell U.S. stocks and buy up stocks in other countries if they could. Obviously, a lot of value would be destroyed during that process. And Lockout469 says, so what's going to happen to Sundial, Rob? So, yeah, let's take a peek at this. I will pull this up right here. And I looked at it this morning. And we are still waiting to see what Sundial reports to the SEC. So this is these are filings for Sundial. The last form that came out was a 6K. We're looking for an 8K that's coming out more recently, right? The 6K came out the 24th of January. We need Sundial to put out that 8K telling us what happened, right? If they got that delisting letter or if they got an extension, we're going to see. But I will say that Sundial has until the 11th, I believe. If they got that delisting letter, they have to disclose it within 4 days of receiving it. So we're hopefully going to see something from them by the 11th. And hopefully it's something good, right? Sundial's price at the moment, I'll pull up Sundial right here. Looks like they're using 50 cents as support at the moment, right? They had a somewhat bearish day yesterday. They moved down a little bit, though they did make new highs in the uptrend in the pre-market yesterday. So if they make new highs today, well, then yeah, we're still continuing this uptrend that we've been on, and it's been okay, right? We made it from lows of 40 cents to highs of 54. That's a somewhat significant gain, but not many people were able to buy as low as 40 cents, right? Most people in Sundial were probably buying it when we were at much higher prices, right? Above 50 cents, above $1 even. A lot of people were buying Sundial, so we're going to see how high this uptrend can take us, right? If we do continue moving up, if the markets continue to recover, especially if small caps continue to recover, that's what we're really looking for with Sundial. And of course, we don't want them to get delisted because that would almost certainly have a very negative impact on their stock price. But they could appeal the process, even if they do have a delisting letter. So we're going to see what happens, and we will keep you guys up to date whenever that report comes out, right? We're just waiting for it. Come on, Sundial, send out some word of what's going on. So far, they've been pretty tight-lipped, so we'll see what happens with Sundial growers. Hopefully, we'll get some good stuff coming from them relatively soon. And it's potentially possible that we'll get some good stuff coming from DWAC as well, right? We did hear, let's pull up the news right here, that Trump is to appear on Fox Business this morning. Let's pull up this story, wherever it went. There we go. So Fox's Maria Bartiromo will have an interview with Donald Trump on her Fox Business show this morning, and I'm not sure exactly what time this is going to be, but we might try to pull it up for a second if he does end up saying anything about DWAC, Truth Social, Rumble. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, he could say a lot of things, and who knows what he's going to say, but it could be good for the stock. Now, as for why we saw a big decrease in price yesterday, who knows? I mean, I will pull up the short interest, but man, stocks can be quite volatile sometimes, and not every move has a direct reason, especially I've noticed with DWAC. Sometimes it makes big moves to the upside that when there's no news necessarily, and sometimes it makes these big swings to the downside, and nobody likes to see big swings to the downside unless you're a short, and it looks like there are a significant amount of shorts at least, right? You can see 13.63% of the free float on DWAC is short, 4.09 million shares. So some people, most people were probably shorting before this, but pretty much everyone was shorting before DWAC was that expensive. Now it's getting to the point where DWAC it's getting close to making new highs for the most part, right? If you look back at the past year, you can see the highs that it technically made were 175. But it was there for a very brief second. There was very little time that it was really over $100, right? There was only a couple of hours on 2 trading days that it was over $100. And yes, there was a lot of volume on it, but people who really like the stock have had plenty of opportunity to be buying up more shares and cost averaging down at cheaper prices. And people who really hate the stock, the shorts, have had plenty of opportunity to be shorting it at these lower prices as well, which is actually bad for them because as it rises, that means they're losing more. If they just stuck with their original shorts at 100 plus, they'd still be in the green. But look at this. We did see a dramatic increase in short interest fairly recently, and then, a lot of it faded away as people got worried as the price continued to climb. But it's kind of scary to see for the shorts that DWAC has been relatively stable, that it's been pretty strong price action-wise, and that it doesn't look like there's any sign of it faltering, right? It seems to have found a support at $40, a very high price, considering where this SPAC started, 4x the price, a 400% increase in price. And the shorts, they're probably pretty worried about it because it just seems to be climbing and climbing as of late. And it seems to be that there's little they can do about it, right? They've tried shorting it, and all that happened was they ended up losing money. Look at this. They tried shorting it massively when they saw that it was on the downtrend. In fact, maybe they even pushed it down a little bit over this period right here. I'll try to get that out of the way. They may have even pushed it down when this short interest increased dramatically. And then all they could do was decrease their short interest and cover their shorts as it continued to rise in price. So that's what we've seen with DWAC so far. Incredible strength and really good news, right? Really great fundamental news. They're partnering with Rumble, Cfvi, and Rumble. Boy, oh boy, do I think Rumble has a really bright future. I mean, we're on Rumble. I think that that's probably the way of things. We've yet to even get a lot of these really big YouTubers on Rumble. And I think that once people start to see the way the tides are turning, once they start to see that Rumble is probably a safer place for them, that they're not just going to get taken down for saying stuff that someone doesn't like, I think they're going to want that kind of security. Because at the end of the day, the reason that a lot of people choose to do this kind of thing is because they want the security of not having to report back to a boss, right? Who wants to report to a boss where at any moment the boss could say, you're fired, I don't like that shirt you're wearing, or, I don't like you in general, I'm going to fire you. Who wants that? Nobody wants that. So it's not actually that different if you're on YouTube and you end up saying something that people don't like, and then people just come to a consensus, let's get rid of this guy because we don't like him. It's not actually that different. So it's kind of the same thing if you think about it. And that's why I think a lot of people are probably going to be moving over to Rumble, or at least adding their stuff to Rumble. And I think it's really beneficial for people to be doing that and supporting companies that do good things. I think that's really important. And you can't just go where the money is all the time, right? Sometimes you have to make decisions that are good over the long term, that aren't necessarily making you much money, and just do stuff out of the goodness of your heart. But also not necessarily just out of the goodness of your heart, but also because you understand that the world is going to change based off of what you do. And you have to do stuff that's good for you and for the world over the long term, because much like Jordan Peterson has said in a recent podcast with Joe Rogan, who wants to be the king of hell, right? You might be able to get super wealthy doing really scummy stuff, but at the end of the day, nobody wants to be the king of hell. If that's where you're living, nobody wants that. So I think that it's really important to support companies that support good causes and have good ethics behind them. So we'll see how long Rumble lasts, right? Maybe all companies are eventually doomed to slowly go down the path of censorship. And, once, in 10, 20 years, when the current leaders of Rumble step down and put in their successors, then they'll think, hey, maybe we need to censor a little bit. We'll see what happens. But at the time being, it seems like a pretty good company, a pretty good place to be. And I really like it. So all things considered, guys, if you do want to check out the Rumble stream, we're on Rumble. You could be watching on Rumble too. I appreciate the YouTube viewers as well. I appreciate the Rumble viewers, the YouTube viewers. Thank you guys very much for joining us. And we'll be doing other stuff. We will be doing other stuff, and we'll probably be announcing it soon with Rumble, with companies that they own. And it's exciting stuff, right? The market opened a minute ago, so we did miss that 2 minutes ago, it looks like. But we are going to be making some announcements about Rumble and whatnot pretty soon. Pretty cool stuff, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with Rumble over the long term. And Rich M says, I'm switching to Rumble when Truth goes live. Yeah, I think a lot of people might. Now, it looks like the S&P is seeing a little bit of green on the day. DWAC and CFVI getting pushed down just a touch, but pretty much everything is down from the look of it, except the small caps, right? The S&P is down 0.04%. The small caps are up. The Russell's is up 0.14%. So let's pull up. I'm sure the market map won't actually be active yet, but we can still, what was it that I wanted to pull up? I'm forgetting what it was. Maybe it was, I had the tab open. I'm looking for it. Unfortunately, I have like 50 tabs open, so it's a little tough to see. But here we go. There stock twits went. It was hiding from us. So it looks like a lot of people are talking about the SPY. All right. And then after that, Shiba Inu. Yeah, for anyone who was unaware, I'll pull up CoinMarketCap. Shiba Inu went on a run the other day, and a lot of people are hoping that this could be the big one. It's up 14% over the past 24 hours, 47% over the past 7 days. And we'll take a peek at the chart, right? All cryptos have been on a decent rally. It's not just Shiba Inu, but people are making this out to be more important than the other coins running, right? Because there's a lot of faith in Shiba Inu, some people have, and we'll see what can happen, right? Looking at the past month, they are green over the past 30 days. The past 3 months, they're still fairly red, so not looking great. But maybe we could see a big rally in Shiba price. I hold a little bit, not all that much, but all things considered, Shiba Inu could be a good one. Ethereum and Bitcoin, I'm more bullish on over the long term, though, right? I think those are good ones. And I will point out, if anyone is interested, there's a bank that I use that actually lets me get USDC, which is USD coin. And that's CoinMarketCap's stable coin. So I'll pull this out real quick, let you guys see it, because it's a pretty cool app. And it actually gives you about 4% interest on your money. So let me just turn on demo mode. All right, so there we go. Now it's all private, and you guys can see what I'm talking about, but here we go. So let's pull up the main camera for a second while we discuss this just very briefly, because it's a very cool app, and I know I've showed it on the stream before, and some people have used it, and we are going to be starting up a pool pretty soon. So we've got Yoda Bank, Yotta Bank, and essentially the way it works is you get these lottery tickets every week, and you can actually turn your money into USDC using these crypto buckets. So you get 4% interest rate with these crypto buckets. Granted, they're not FDIC insured, so there's a little bit of risk there, but you get 2.5 times the ticket. So every $10 that you have put in these crypto buckets, you get one ticket every week. So it pays you to save, essentially, right? They give you lottery tickets just to save your money in their app, in their bank. It's FDIC insured unless you're using the crypto buckets, and it's a pretty cool banking app that I really like. And if you guys want 100 free tickets, you can use code Rob Almazy when you join, right? If you use the code Rob Almazy when you join, no space in between right there, you get 100 free tickets for signing up. I get some free tickets, and we are going to be starting up a pool where we can pool all of our lottery tickets. But I just wanted to point that out. It is a bank that I really like and that I've been using for a while and have gotten far more interest on, right, than a normal bank account. In fact, I've not even been using it for a year, and I've already gotten $112 worth of interest in this bank account. And, not necessarily just interest, but prizes from those lottery tickets as well, which I'll show you guys how much you can win, if you guys are curious. It starts all the way down here at just getting one Powerball. You get 10 cents. 3 numbers, you get 15 cents. Number in the Powerball, you get 15 cents, all the way up to you could win a Tesla or $10 million every single week. So it seems unlikely that you would win every single week, but it is a very cool app. If you use the code Rob Almazy, then you get 100 free tickets in your first week, and it's something that I certainly like. So if you guys are interested, feel free to check it out, and we will be doing a pool very soon. In fact, I've already made the pool. I just need to finish setting it up, but you can use it to pool all your tickets together and split the prize, and it's a pretty cool feature. So feel free to check that out. Now, the S&P. Let's see. We can't quite decide which way we want to go with this. It's just bouncing around. Stocks seem pretty stagnant. In fact, other than DWAC and Cfvi, there's not too much movement in either direction. Now, DWAC and Cfvi are moving down somewhat significantly. DWAC down 6%, Cfvi down 4.5%. It's not the best situation, but it could certainly be worse. Looking at the 30-day charts, it's not like they're at 30-day lows or even anywhere near it. They are pretty darn high, even compared to where they were just 5 days ago. So all things considered, we're not looking at too poor of a situation for them. They seem to be doing pretty good. And AMC just jumped. Okay. Let's see. Let's see what happened to AMC. So AMC up. All right. It's up a little bit. Yeah, it jumped a little bit. And Abstract says, what's happening with Sundial reverse split? So we are waiting, Abstract. We are waiting for Sundial to file an 8K form with the SEC. And they have until the 11th to do it. And that should indicate to us if they got a delisting letter, right? So by the latest, the 11th, we'll know something. Most likely, right? Unless they decide not to comply with that, but I can't see them doing that, right? So here, I'll pull up the delisting rules, and thank you, NJ. Thank you. Happy $2 Tuesday. I appreciate that, man. I think that makes a lot of sense. That $2 Tuesday thing. Maybe you're starting something here. The Sundial delisting process, right? The Sundial delisting process, there's a couple of options they've got. They could do a reverse split. They could get an additional grace period granted to them, and that would probably be revealed to us pretty soon, right? Probably in the next couple of days, they would reveal that to us. They could have gotten a delisting letter, and they then have up to 4 business days to reveal that to us by filing an 8K with the SEC. So we're waiting to see if that comes out at some point in the near future. And if they do get that letter, they can appeal their delisting to the hearings panel, and that will indefinitely delay the Sundial delisting, okay? Until the hearings panel, this request halts the delisting process until the panel renders a decision. So we would have some time with them, one way or another, right? Because they probably don't want to get delisted, is my guess. I would think that Sundial doesn't want to get delisted. That's just my guess. Obviously, I'm not the CEO of Sundial, but my guess would be they don't want to be delisted. They want their stock price to appreciate. The CEO would not be well liked by the board, probably, who would lose quite a bit of money if Sundial was delisted and had a lot less liquidity because of that. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with it. But we've got a couple of days to see what happens with it. Paul Rush says, getting out of Sundial now makes 0 sense. Well, I'll say, if you got money you can't afford to lose, you probably don't want to have it invested in general, right? It's a different situation for everyone. In my situation, I've got money. I can afford to lose it if Sundial moves down. A lot of my Sundial shares are actually on this brokerage account, right? So we've actually got them on TD Ameritrade, and it would not be the worst case scenario for me because I could still trade Sundial as an over-the-counter stock on TD Ameritrade. Now, I've got a bunch on Robinhood as well. Those I would only have access to sell. I couldn't buy more there. But I'm not too worried about the delisting, right? I think that as a company, Sundial probably understands that delisting would be the worst case scenario for them. They do not want to delist because they have access to a whole massive market in the US, and a ton of people have bought them up in the past when there have been legalization chances. And we're getting huge legalization chances coming soon, coming this year, before November of this year when the midterm elections are. There is probably going to be a massive push for legalization on both the Democrats and Republican side, and you can already see that starting. Let's see this right here. So Schumer, a Democrat in the Senate, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, announced at a press conference on Friday that he's aiming to formally file his much-anticipated bill to federally legalize cannabis in April. So April, a couple months before November, everyone wants to get the hype of legalization going for their party, right? They want people coming to the polls to vote for their party so that they can legalize cannabis. And Republicans are doing this too. Nancy Mace, we'll pull up Nancy Mace. On Twitter, we'll probably pull her up. That's where she had her pinned tweet. So let's see, Nancy Mace. Here we go. So Nancy Mace, Amazon endorsed her bill, her States Reforms Act, that would end federal government's prohibition on cannabis. So there are bills on both the Republican side and the Democrat side, and everybody wants this thing to hype up their party right before the November midterms, because we are actually at a pretty critical point voter-wise. We can take a peek at the breakdown. So look at this. Well, this is the House, right? We can pull up the House. The House has 212 Republicans, 222 Democrats. It's pretty close. And we'll pull up the Senate next. It's also pretty close. So let's see if we can't find a better page than that. Some of this is historical data. Come on, here we go. Here we go. So we've got in the Senate 48 Democrats, 50 Republicans, 2 independents, and things have never been this close cut. Look at this. I mean, they have been occasionally, but look at that. We're pretty darn close, and it could really swing in either direction, depending on who is able to market themselves better. We could see the House and Senate swinging in either direction, and that could put a lot of pressure on people to actually push for legalization. Because if we take a peek at this poll, Americans overwhelmingly say cannabis should be legal for recreational or medical use. And if you take a peek at this picture right here, of the people who voted in this poll, 60% of people, and I believe this is regardless of party, this is just of U.S. adults, say that cannabis should be legal for medical and recreational use. 31% say it should be legal for medical use only. 8% say it should not be legal to any extent, and 1% refuse to answer the poll. So all things considered, there are quite a few people who think cannabis should be legal and would probably be more willing to vote for a party or a person who wants to promote legalization as well. I think a lot of people have grown sick and tired of these archaic laws that are in place. And that will benefit Sundial stock, right? We will see most likely a pump in Sundial stock and all the other cannabis stocks, because that's what we've typically seen in the past. These things have blown up massively whenever there's a chance of legalization. And it's worth noting that legalization will certainly help these companies' underlying fundamentals. We'll definitely see them have more access to customers and more access to safe banking and bigger markets to expand into if the U.S. does decide to legalize, because the U.S., I believe, is the largest cannabis market in the world, the largest potential cannabis market in the world. And it would certainly be really good for those companies' fundamentals if we were able to see them expand into the U.S. But what's even more pressing than that is the hype that is typically generated around these things will probably create a pretty big pump in their price, and it will probably be a short-term pump, right? We'll probably reach a peak and subside a little bit, probably to a much higher value than they currently are at, and then we'll probably be on a slow and steady grind up. So, I'm not going to play it completely as a trade or completely as a long-term investment. I'm going to try to catch some of the peak, and some of the ways I might do that are when I see these stocks taking off, maybe I'll sell some shares each day that they're taking off and sell a little bit each day, still hold some in a long-term account. Maybe I'll sell some call options using the shares as collateral, because those calls just inflate in value massively when stocks are pumping up big. And maybe I'll take a mix of those two strategies. So we'll see what happens. At the time, I'll have to decide, when looking at the prices of the calls and the options and all that. But I did want to point out that, there is trading potential and investment potential in these companies, both over the long and short term. So that's just my opinion on them. Obviously, with Sundial, there's some risk. We've got to hope it doesn't get delisted. That would not be good. But if it doesn't get delisted, if they announce some kind of good news, some kind of extension, I think that a lot of people are pretty fearful of that right now. We could see a little pop in their price. Not a massive legalization sized pop, but at least a little pop. It would not surprise me to see a little bit of a boost. So hopefully we'll see something good coming down the pipeline for these cannabis stocks. If not, then we might be waiting a couple of months until April, but we'll see what happens, right? At any point, we could really get some momentum going in the House and Senate. And it doesn't have to be Schumer's bill, right? It could be any bill, right? The Nancy Mace's bill, the States Reforms Act, is already in the House, so people could start voting on it if they want. And I hope they do. So Ramin Perot says, just out of interest, Rob, do you or have you ever used cannabis? I'm hoping and praying for the U.S. to legalize. Hopefully UK will follow, although there's not much hope over there. That's the kind of stuff we can't really talk about on the stream, man. We're not Psyched Substance or anyone like that. Although, if anyone hasn't checked out Psyched Substance's YouTube channel, it's deteriorated in quality over the past couple of years, but he had an interesting channel at one point. But that's the kind of stuff we can't talk about on the stream. But we can talk about the stock. So the stock I'm bullish on. I think the stock is a good one, and we'll see if I'm right. At any point I could be wrong, but that's why I'm not just in Sundial stock. Right, I have holdings in Tilray, Canopy Growth, Aurora, Organigram, a lot of these cannabis companies. Right, because you never know which one is actually going to be the one that ends up prevailing. Right, I'm most bullish on Sundial in terms of massive pump potential. I'm probably most bullish on Tilray in terms of becoming one of the larger cannabis companies over the next 20 years. But we'll see what happens with these companies, right? I think Tilray is a bit more of a fundamental play, and Sundial, while they've got good fundamentals, has more pump potential than Tilray, right? They were really the one that was being touted as a meme stock back in the past, and I think that we could get that again, and they probably have the highest percentage chance of seeing a massive pump percentage-wise. So Kitchener Leslie says, Trump will legalize weed and cancel student loans to calm the savages when he comes back. Maybe, man. Maybe he will. See, I don't know if he'd cancel student loans, but maybe we'll see legalization. I mean, it's a good business decision, right? A lot of tax revenue. A lot of Republicans have been coming over to the legalization camp because they realize the massive tax revenue that can be generated. And let's see if we can pull up something. Here we go. Yeah, so states have collected more than $10 billion in adult use cannabis tax revenue, report finds. And this came out a month ago. So states that have legalized cannabis have collectively garnered more than $10 billion in cannabis tax revenue since the first legal state started in 2014. And they could probably get a whole lot more if it was federally legal, right? If it was federally accepted, a lot of people who are kind of closeted regarding their use of cannabis, might start buying it more legally, right? They might start shopping at dispensaries, and there would certainly be a whole bunch of additional dispensaries that are open. It would certainly be a lot easier to run a dispensary if they had safe banking, and we could see a massive boost to tax revenue. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we really need to get us out of this pit that we're in with all of our debt, right? We could certainly use some additional tax revenue from cannabis. Now, obviously, $10 billion a year, or even it wasn't even $10 billion a year. It was $10 billion total. That's not going to get us out of the pit, but it is helping out. Whereas a lot of the stuff, a lot of the policies that we've got in place does not help. They do not help. In fact, they tend to hurt the national debt, most of the public policies that we have on average. And that's why we have a big national debt, right? If on average, the public policies we enacted decreased the national debt and provided revenue for the government, then we would have the opposite of national debt. We would have a big surplus. But that is not the case. We have a big deficit because whenever the government enacts new policy, on average, it's going to eat up money. And that's just statistics. You can't argue with it. If we have a national debt, that's just the case. So what are the shorts on Sundial, asks Jeff Duval. We'll take a peek at the shorts on Sundial. Let's see what we're at, short interest-wise. Okay, so look at that. We've been slowly but surely decreasing in shorts over the past couple of days, down to 12.26%, 251 million shares short. And if we zoom in on what's been going on recently, you can see that over the past couple of days, some shorts have been deciding to slowly cover their positions. Not quite renewing the downtrend that we were on. We need to get down to, to 244 million shorts before we're renewing that downtrend and continuing to move to new lower lows on shorts. And Zach says, pull up the DWAC. You're right. What the heck is AMC doing up here? What the heck is AMC doing? So look at that. DWAC bouncing off of $80. Good stuff. Look at that. Yeah, sometimes I forget about what charts we've got up. And, I know that the chart in the bottom right is not too visible because the webcam is kind of blocking. I need to decrease the size of the webcam maybe by 10, 20%, just so that it's a little bit more visible, and maybe pull the screen up a little bit. Kind of like how Matt Kors has it, just have a little bit of dead space in the bottom. Maybe we could put some text there or something, just so that this chart is a little bit more visible, because sometimes you really can't see. I mean, look at this. In the bottom right chart, you really can't see what's been going on. And if I forget to zoom in on it, then you don't know. So we need to do some kind of adjustment to the webcam probably, and the way this is formatted, but we'll get there. We'll do it. We'll definitely do that at some point. Sundial, we're slowly eking a gain out on the day. Look at that. Let me see if the market map is up, if we can see what stocks have been gaining, what have been losing. Yeah, this is kind of what I was expecting. It looks like a pretty dead day. Not too much movement to the upside or the downside. Nothing is. It's all very faded on this market map, right? Where there's nothing too bright. The brightest thing is Amgen up 6%, and then Micron Technologies up 3%. So we're looking at a pretty dead day in the stock market. Stocks have not been making moves that are that crazy for the most part, right? We saw DWAC and Cfvi take a hit earlier, but it looks like they're recovering. They're only down 2%. That's not bad, all things considered. And what's interesting is that the Cfvi warrants are actually green on the day, right? So the warrants are actually gaining value. They're up 5% on the day. And so let's see what someone said something. So Callan Hogg says, do you have any thoughts about Microsoft Activision buyout? Microsoft will pay $95 a share. Activision is in the 70s. Seems like free money. Think there's much chance SEC will refuse. So I remember when I first saw ATVI pump up on the Microsoft news. I haven't followed the story too closely, but they did certainly pump up quite a bit. There is chance that they could. Tyler Mike, please do not, all right, we're going to. All right. We have, there we go. Tyler Mike, enough spamming the chat, please. So there is a chance, right, that Microsoft will be buying out ATVI. I haven't kept up too closely with it. Let's see. ATVI buyout. Yeah, so Activision stock. Time to recap profits for Microsoft deal. Microsoft has announced the acquisition of Activision Blizzard for $95 per share. They see some risks for the failure of the transaction. And 45% premium over the previous day's closing price. All right, regulatory risk. The deal must be approved by the antitrust authorities of the United States, Europe, and China, the U.S. regulators. The U.S. regulator is of particular concern as it has been keeping a close eye on the tech giants in recent years. And it is notable, Microsoft owns, they have a bunch of games. They got Minecraft. They got a bunch of games under their belt. So for them to take over Activision, maybe people would view that as a monopolization of the gaming industry. Obviously, there's still a lot of other gaming companies out there, but we'll see. People must think that there's a significant amount of risk. If ATVI is currently trading at $80 and the deal would go through at 90, I mean, that's a big percentage gain. Now, there is some downside, right? You could be down if we're trading at 80 and it was trading at 65 before the deal. Then yeah, you could be down $15 or you could be up $15. It looks like people are actually pricing this as a 50% chance of going through because you can either stand to make 15 or lose 15 to the downside. So that is interesting. I don't know for sure if they'll get approved or disapproved. I would think that there shouldn't be too much of a problem with them getting approved, but maybe they will. Right? The tech giants have definitely had some issues as of late. Right? There have been worries about monopolization and whatnot, and maybe they don't want them to be able to buy out any of these companies. So, Slim Daddy Bim says there is rumor that Meta will buy Sandbox, which is the biggest metaverse. Maybe we could see that. I don't know if we'll see it. We might. I think isn't Sandbox, that's all about NFTs and whatnot, and it's kind of decentralized. And the Sandbox gaming is, or the metaverse gaming, right? Crypto gaming is a big deal. I think, I'm going to look more into it, but I think that there is some real potential there. And that would probably be a smart acquisition on Facebook's part, right? They need something like that. Zach Taylor asks, did you see the Peter Thiel news? I did not. In fact, I don't really know who Peter Thiel is. I've heard the name before, but I haven't kept up with him too closely. So I'm sorry about that, Zach. But I will say about the gaming metaverse stuff, the gaming cryptos, there is real potential there. I think that we're probably going to try to move into a decentralized gaming space where you can have the most talent, not at these big AAA companies, but potentially, making their own games, making a little bit of a profit when these games are sold and when NFTs are transacted in. And that's where you might get the most talent going into a decentralized space. Whereas right now, Activision is a great gaming company. Activision Blizzard, they make a ton of cool games. They make Diablo, they make Call of Duty, Overwatch, all kinds of stuff. And in the future, we might see gaming going into the crypto space. We might see these decentralized companies, not companies really, but decentralized gaming areas, right? These code sources, these open source code things, where people are currently able to make these games and make NFTs and cryptos in the games. We might see people moving over to that direction. We might see the talented coders moving over there. Peter Thiel meta news. Let's pull that up. Peter Thiel to exit Meta's board to support Trump-aligned candidates. All right, let's see. Here we go. Peter Thiel. Look at that. So Peter Thiel to step down from the board of Facebook parent Meta. Billionaire tech investor and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel will step down from board of Facebook, owner of Meta, the company announced Monday. Thiel was an early investor in Facebook. He's been a controversial character due to his vocal support of Donald Trump, lawsuit against Gawker Media, and for some of his startup investments. All right, so PayPal co-founder stepped down from the board of Facebook owner Meta, the company announced. Wow. Very cool stuff. So is he going to be moving over to DWAC True Social? He might be. Where is it? Let's see if we can find. No. Let's see what we can find about this. Okay, so who said this quote? Trump said this. I want to start by thanking Peter because he saw something very early, maybe before we saw it. And he said that in 2016, so that's not too relevant, but cool stuff. Can't say I've heard too much about Peter Thiel. Zach says Thiel is as powerful as Soros. Kitchener says Google Biden $30 million pipes. I don't think we're searching for that one. I don't think we're searching for that. That seems like the kind of thing we shouldn't search for on stream. Maybe off stream I'll look into it. Look at that Sundial down about 1%, breaking through the 50. We'll see if we can regain it over the course of the day. Hopefully we can, but it is 10 o'clock. And Zach says he's a mega investor in Rumble. I'm not surprised by that. If he's in startups, then I think a lot of startup investors are probably pretty bullish on Rumble. But it is the end of the stream. We have hit the 10 o'clock mark. So thank you guys for joining us, both on YouTube and Rumble. We're here every morning at 9, so feel free to join us in the future. We like to break down the news in the markets, talk about fun stuff, engage with the chat and all that. And I will look very briefly. It looks like, yeah, we're still not getting too many chats on the Rumble stream. So maybe in the future we'll have a bit more of a Rumble chat community going on. We only have about 3 chats there, but we've got some viewers on Rumble at least. So other than that, guys, have a great day. Hope to see you in the next one. Keep in mind, nothing in the streams is financial advice. It's just my opinion. But there are some stocks that we just looked at today. I'm pretty bullish on them. We'll see what happens. So other than that, guys, see you tomorrow at 9. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.